As I drove into Cedar Hollow, the landscape unfolded like a painting from a forgotten era. The trees, an array of burnt oranges and deep reds, swayed gently in the autumn breeze, their leaves whispering secrets to one another. I could feel the weight of the town pressing down on my shoulders, a curious mix of tranquility and foreboding. It was the kind of place where stories lingered in the air, woven into the very fabric of the streets and buildings. I parked my car in front of a quaint cafe that looked like it had been plucked from a postcard. The sign above the door swung slightly, announcing the establishment as the Hollow Brew. I stepped inside, the bell chiming softly as I entered, and was greeted by the rich aroma of brewed coffee and the warm chatter of locals. The cafe was cozy, with wooden beams and vintage photographs adorning the walls, each one telling a tale of the past. "Welcome. What can I get for you?" asked the barista, a young woman with bright blue eyes and a friendly smile. "I'll have a black coffee, please," I replied, trying to shake off the unease that had settled in the pit of my stomach. As she prepared my drink, I scanned the room, noting the small groups huddled over their drinks, sharing laughter and stories. But amidst the jovial atmosphere, I caught snippets of conversation that sent a chill down my spine. Phrases like the Abernathy House and another disappearance floated through the air, heavy with dread. "Here you go," the barista said, handing me my coffee. "Anything else I can help you with?" I hesitated, then decided to dig a little deeper. "What's this I'm hearing about the Abernathy House? I just arrived in town, and it seems like quite the topic." Her smile faltered slightly, and she glanced around, as if ensuring no one else was listening. "Ah, the Abernathy House. It's best you don't get involved with that place. Strange things have happened there, and people have gone missing. It's cursed, I suppose." "Cursed?" I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean by that?" She sighed, her expression turning serious. "A long time ago, there was a tragedy there, a young woman named Emily Abernathy. After her death, a lot of people in town started disappearing. Some say her spirit is still trapped in that house, and it draws in anyone who gets too close." Before I could ask more, a voice broke in from a nearby table. An older man, wrinkled and grizzled, leaned forward, his eyes narrowing at me. "You're not thinking of visiting that place, are you?" he warned, his voice gravelly and low. "You'd be better off leaving Cedar Hollow before nightfall." "Why's that?" I asked, curiosity piqued. "Because no good comes from that house," he said, shaking his head. "I've lived here all my life, and I've seen what it does to people. Young folks go in thinking it's some kind of adventure, and they never come out the same, if they come out at all." "Have you seen anyone disappear?" I pressed, feeling the weight of his words. He nodded grimly. "My niece was one of them. Went in looking for a thrill with her friends, and they found her. Well, let's just say they found her, but she wasn't who she used to be. She never spoke again, just stared at the walls like she was seeing something we couldn't." I felt a shiver crawl up my spine as the barista placed a plate of pastries on the counter. "Maybe you should stick to the town stories and leave the house alone," she added, her voice barely above a whisper. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted. Laughter turned to hushed conversations, and I could sense the fear that lingered beneath the surface. I took a sip of my coffee, the bitterness grounding me, but the stories swirled in my mind, igniting a flame of curiosity. "Thank you for the warning," I finally said, trying to mask my intrigue with a polite smile. "But I think I might take a look for myself. It sounds like there's a lot more to this story." The old man's face darkened. "You'll regret it. You think you're brave, but the house has a way of turning bravery into folly. Just remember, not all ghosts are friendly." With that ominous note hanging in the air, I finished my coffee and stepped back out into the crisp autumn air. The clouds above had thickened, casting a gray pallor over the town. I felt an inexplicable pull toward the Abernathy House, like a moth drawn to a flame, despite the warnings echoing in my ears. As I made my way through the quiet streets, I could see the outline of the Abernathy House in the distance. It loomed like a specter, its windows dark and foreboding. The closer I got, the more the hairs on my neck stood on end. The house seemed to breathe, exhaling a chill that nipped at my skin. I finally stood before the wrought iron gate, which was slightly ajar, as if inviting me in. A sudden gust of wind rustled the leaves around me, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the town, but the desire for answers pushed me forward. As I stepped through the gate, I could feel the weight of the air shift. The path leading to the front door was overgrown, nature reclaiming what had once been a grand entrance. I made my way up the cracked steps, each creak echoing in the stillness. I reached for the doorbell, my heart racing, and pressed it. The sound echoed through the house like a tolling bell. I stood there, breathless, waiting for a response. Moments passed, and just as I was about to turn away, the door creaked open, revealing a darkened interior that sent another shiver through me. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely breaking the silence. No answer. I stepped inside, the door creaking ominously behind me. The air was thick with dust, and I could almost feel the weight of time pressing down on the walls. Shadows danced in the corners of the room, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. "Anyone here?" I tried again, but my voice seemed to get swallowed by the darkness. As I ventured further into the house, I was struck by the remnants of a life once lived here. Faded photographs adorned the walls, their subjects long gone but their stories lingering in the air. I felt drawn to one in particular, a portrait of a young woman with hauntingly beautiful eyes. "Emily?" I whispered, feeling a connection to her that was inexplicable. I moved closer, tracing the outline of her face with my finger. There was something in her expression that tugged at my heart, a mix of longing and sadness. I stepped back, trying to shake off the feeling, but it clung to me like a shadow. "Why are you here?" A voice suddenly interrupted my thoughts. I turned to find a woman standing in the doorway, her posture tense and her eyes wide with alarm. She looked to be in her late 20s, with dark hair cascading over her shoulders and a fierce determination in her gaze. I'm just exploring," I stammered, caught off guard. "Exploring," she echoed, skepticism dripping from her words. "You shouldn't be here. This house, it's not safe." "I've heard stories about this place," I admitted, trying to gauge her reaction. I wanted to see it for myself. "Stories." She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "You think this is some kind of adventure? You don't know what you're dealing with. This house has a life of its own." "What do you mean?" I asked, compelled by her intensity. She hesitated, glancing around as if the walls were listening. "I'm Sarah," she finally said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "and I've come here for a reason. I need to find out what happened to my brother. He disappeared years ago, and I believe it's connected to this house." Her words sent a jolt through me. "Your brother? You think he's still here?" "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling, "but I can't leave until I find out. This house holds secrets, and I need to uncover them." I felt a strange sense of camaraderie with her, drawn together by the mysteries that surrounded us. "Maybe we can help each other," I suggested, the weight of my own curiosity pushing me forward. Her gaze softened slightly, and she nodded. "All right, but we need to be careful. The energy in this place is overwhelming. We can't let it consume us." Together, we stepped further into the depths of the Abernathy house, the shadows curling around us like a shroud. I could feel the air crackling with tension, as if the house itself was drawing us into its dark embrace. Whatever secrets lay hidden within these walls, I knew I was now part of the story, a story that was far from over. As I stood before the weathered door of the Abernathy house, my heart raced with a mix of trepidation and fascination. The stories I had heard in Cedar Hollow echoed in my mind, tales of hauntings and the dark history that surrounded this very place. The air was thick with an unsettling weight, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to make my move. With a deep breath, I pressed the doorbell. The sound echoed through the stillness, and for a moment, I wondered if I would be met with silence or a voice from the shadows. To my surprise, the door creaked open slowly, revealing an interior cloaked in darkness and dust. A chill ran down my spine as a cold draft enveloped me, and I felt an inexplicable sensation of being watched. "Hello," I called out, my voice wavering slightly. The house seemed to respond with a sigh, almost as if it were acknowledging my presence. I stepped inside, the wooden floorboards creaking under my weight, and the air was heavy with the scent of age and neglect. As I moved deeper into the house, I caught sight of an old photograph hanging crookedly on the wall. It depicted a young woman, her expression both serene and sorrowful. Her name was Emily, or so the faded inscription below read. Beside her stood a young man, handsome yet shadowed by an aura of melancholy. They appeared to be lovers, their eyes filled with a longing that transcended time. I felt an inexplicable connection to them, as if their souls were whispering to me from the beyond. "Who were you?" I whispered to the photograph, feeling a sudden urge to know their story. Just then, a soft rustle broke the silence, and I turned to see Sarah emerging from the gloom of another room. Her eyes widened as she took in the sight of me standing there, seemingly entranced by the photograph. "Did you find something?" she asked, her voice low as if afraid to disturb the spirits that lingered in the air. "I found this picture of Emily and her lover," I replied, gesturing toward the wall. "There's something about them. It's like they're calling out to me." Sarah stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she studied the pair in the photograph. "Emily Abernathy," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've heard her name mentioned in the tales of this town. They say her love story was tragic." "Tragic how?" I pressed, my curiosity piqued. "The legend says Emily fell in love with a boy from a rival family," Sarah explained, her brow furrowing. "Their love was forbidden, and it led to heartbreak and mystery. Many believe her spirit still wanders these halls, searching for him." A shiver ran through me, not just from the cold of the house, but from the weight of the history it held. "What happened to them?" "No one knows for sure," Sarah replied, glancing around as if the walls themselves might offer an answer. "But there are whispers of a curse, something that traps their souls here, along with others who have met tragic ends in this house." As she spoke, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, causing the curtains to flutter violently. I instinctively took a step back, my heart pounding. "Did you feel that?" I asked, my voice rising in pitch. "Yeah," Sarah said, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "It's as if the house is alive, reacting to our presence." "I don't think we should stay here much longer," I urged, glancing back at the door, which now seemed like an escape route from the mounting tension. "What if we're disturbing something?" "No," she countered, her eyes flashing with determination. "We need to learn more. If there's a curse, if Emily is trapped here, we might be able to help her." "Help her?" I echoed, incredulity lacing my tone. "How can we possibly do that? We don't even know what we're dealing with." Sarah stepped closer to the photograph, her gaze fixed on Emily's haunting eyes. "We need to find out what happened. The more we understand, the better chance we have of setting her free." I hesitated, torn between the instinct to flee and the pull of the mystery that surrounded us. What if it's too dangerous? Or what if it's our only chance to find the truth? She challenged. There was a fire in her eyes that I couldn't ignore. I felt drawn to her resolve, and despite the fear gnawing at my insides, I nodded reluctantly. "Okay, let's look around," I conceded. "But we need to be careful." We began to explore the house, moving from room to room, each one steeped in shadows and memories. The air felt thick, charged with an energy that made my skin prickle. In one room, we found a grand piano, its keys covered in a thick layer of dust. I ran my fingers across the surface, feeling the roughness under my fingertips. "Imagine the music that used to fill this place," Sarah said, her voice soft as she admired the instrument. "It must have been beautiful. Beautiful until it became a tomb," I replied, my voice heavy with the weight of the house's sorrowful history. We continued our search, and in a dimly lit corner, I stumbled across a small, ornate box. It was intricately carved, the wood darkened with age. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my hands, and when I opened it, I gasped. Inside lay a collection of delicate trinkets, each one telling a story of love, loss, and longing. "Look at these," I said, showing Sarah the contents of the box. "They must have belonged to Emily." Sarah leaned in closer, her eyes widening as she examined the items. "This one looks like a locket," she said, carefully lifting it from the box. "I wonder if it contains a picture of her lover." Just as she spoke, the temperature in the room plummeted, and a sudden wave of dread washed over me. I felt as though 1,000 eyes were upon us, observing our every move. "Did you feel that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Yeah," Sarah replied, her expression tense. "It's like the house doesn't want us here. Maybe we should go," I suggested, my heart racing as the shadows seemed to stretch and sway around us. But Sarah shook her head, her determination unwavering. "No, we can't leave now. We're too close to uncovering the truth." "Fine," I relented, though my gut twisted in protest. "But let's be quick." We moved on, and as we explored further, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were crossing a line, trespassing into a realm that was never meant for us. The house had secrets, dark ones, and I feared what we might awaken by delving deeper into its history. "Let's check upstairs," Sarah suggested, her voice brimming with curiosity. "There might be more clues about Emily and her lover up there." With a reluctant nod, I followed her up the creaky staircase, each step echoing ominously in the stillness. As we reached the landing, the air felt charged, an electric tension crackling around us. We stepped into a long hallway lined with doors, each one a potential portal to the past. "Which one should we try first?" I asked, glancing from door to door. "Let's start with the one at the end," Sarah suggested, pointing to a door that stood slightly ajar, as if inviting us in. With a deep breath, I pushed it open, revealing a room draped in shadows. Inside, the walls were lined with bookshelves filled with dusty tomes and faded photographs. In the center of the room was a small table, and on it lay an old diary, its leather cover cracked and worn. "Look at this," I exclaimed, picking it up. "It could be something important." As I opened the diary, the smell of old paper wafted up, and I began to read the first few entries aloud. "I cannot be with him, for our families are sworn enemies. Each day spent in his company is a day closer to our doom." I paused, glancing at Sarah, who looked entranced. "This is about Emily." "Keep reading," she urged, her eyes wide with anticipation. "But my heart cannot bear the thought of losing him. I will find a way to make this work, even if it means defying my family," I continued, feeling the weight of her words settle over us like a shroud. In that moment, the air shifted again, and I felt the presence of something beyond our understanding, a lingering sorrow that hovered just out of reach. "Emily," I called out, half in jest, half in desperation. "Can you hear me?" A silence followed, thick and suffocating, before I heard a soft whisper that seemed to echo through the room. "Help me?" My heart raced as I exchanged a glance with Sarah, who looked equally astonished. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," I breathed, my pulse quickening. "It came from the diary." "Let's keep looking," she urged, her excitement palpable. "There has to be more." Driven by an unyielding curiosity, we continued our search, unaware of the darkness that lurked just beyond our perception, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. As I stepped into Cedar Hollow, a quaint town tucked away from the chaos of the world, I was immediately struck by the oppressive silence that enveloped the place. The clouds loomed overhead like a thick blanket, casting a gray hue over everything. It was almost as if the town itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Whispers floated through the air, reaching my ears like the distant echoes of a forgotten melody. The locals spoke in hushed tones about the Abernathy House, a dilapidated structure that stood at the edge of town, shrouded in mystery and dark history. Curiosity tugged at me, urging me to learn more. I made my way to the local cafe, a cozy little spot that smelled of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods. It was there that I encountered an old man, his face weathered and lined with the passage of time. He sat alone at a corner table, nursing a cup of steaming tea. I approached him, hoping to glean some insights into the town's secrets. "Excuse me, sir," I began, my voice breaking the stillness. "I've heard some stories about the Abernathy house. Can you tell me more?" The old man looked up, his eyes narrowing as he studied me. "Ah, the Abernathy house," he muttered, his voice gravelly. "That place has seen more tragedy than most could bear. Young folks have gone missing, and it's said the house holds their spirits captive." My heart raced as I leaned closer, captivated by his words. "Missing? What do you mean?" He sighed, glancing around as if afraid someone might overhear. "They say it all began with Emily Abernathy and her forbidden love. Her story is woven with sorrow, and many believe her spirit still wanders the halls of that house, seeking solace." The weight of his words settled heavily on my chest. The idea of a haunted house filled with restless spirits intrigued me, but there was also a sense of dread that accompanied it. And the others? The young people who disappeared. "The house is the epicenter of it all," he whispered, lowering his voice further. "Those who venture too close often don't return. It's as if the house itself is alive, drawing them in, never to let them go." I thanked him and left the cafe, my mind racing with thoughts of Emily and the tragedies that had unfolded within the walls of the Abernathy house. As I walked through the streets, I felt an undeniable pull toward the house. I needed to see it for myself. When I finally arrived at the Abernathy house, the sky had darkened further, and an eerie silence enveloped the property. The house loomed before me, a crumbling structure with shattered windows and ivy creeping up its sides. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached the front door, the wood warped and weathered by time. Just as I was about to knock, an inexplicable chill ran down my spine. It was a feeling I couldn't shake, as though unseen eyes were watching my every move. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the doorbell. The sound echoed through the stillness, and I waited, my pulse quickening. Moments later, the door creaked open slowly, revealing a dark interior that seemed to swallow the light. A cold breeze rushed past me, sending shivers through my body, and I felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. "Is anyone here?" Silence greeted me, heavy and oppressive. I hesitated at the threshold, but my curiosity pushed me forward. I stepped inside, the floorboards creaking beneath my weight. Dust hung in the air, and the smell of decay filled my nostrils. The atmosphere was thick, as if the house itself had absorbed the sorrow of its past. As I ventured deeper into the house, I noticed the remnants of a life long gone. Torn curtains fluttered in the faintest of drafts, and faded photographs adorned the walls, capturing moments frozen in time. One photo in particular caught my eye. A young woman with striking features, her dark hair cascading down her shoulders. Beside her stood a handsome man, their expressions filled with a mix of love and longing. "Emily," I murmured, recognizing the name from the old man's story. I felt a strange connection to her, as if I could almost hear her thoughts echoing in the air around me. What had happened to her? What had driven her to this fate? Just then, I heard a soft sound behind me. I turned to find a woman standing in the doorway, her expression curious but wary. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice soft yet firm. I'm just exploring," I stammered, feeling a bit foolish. I heard stories about this house and wanted to see it for myself. Her brow furrowed as she stepped closer. "You shouldn't be here. This place is dangerous." "I know it has a dark history," I replied, unable to conceal my fascination. "But I can feel it. There's something that wants to be discovered." The woman, who introduced herself as Sarah, studied me for a moment before her expression softened. "You're not the first to be drawn here. Many have come, searching for answers, but few leave unchanged." As we spoke, an inexplicable bond formed between us. Sarah's eyes sparkled with the same curiosity I felt, and it was clear she had her own reasons for being there. "I've been trying to piece together the story of Emily," she confessed. There's so much we don't know. Maybe we can uncover it together, I suggested, excitement bubbling within me. Is there anything else in this house that might give us a clue? She nodded, her expression turning serious. There's something I've been searching for. A diary that belonged to Emily. It's rumored to be hidden somewhere in this house, and it might hold the key to understanding what happened here. With newfound determination, we began our search. We rummaged through dusty rooms filled with forgotten relics, our footsteps echoing in the silence. As we explored, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavier, and shadows danced along the walls, almost as if the house were alive, responding to our presence. Finally, in a dimly lit room, we spotted a loose floorboard. Our hearts raced as we pried it open, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. Inside lay an old, weathered diary, its pages yellowed with age. We exchanged glances, a mix of anticipation and trepidation washing over us. Let's see what secrets you hold, I said, carefully opening the diary. The pages crackled as I turned them, revealing elegant handwriting that spoke of a love that defied the boundaries of society. Emily's words poured forth, detailing her clandestine affair with a young man from a rival family. I could almost hear her voice echoing in my mind as I read each line. But as we delved deeper, the tone shifted. The diary spoke of a curse, a dark malediction that ensnared the spirits of all who had perished in the house, including Emily and her lover. My heart raced as I absorbed the gravity of her words. Sarah, this is... I trailed off, unable to find the right words. I know, she whispered, her eyes wide with realization. This explains everything. The disappearances, the hauntings. It's all connected to the curse. As I continued reading, a cold breeze swept through the room, causing the shadows to flicker ominously. I glanced around, feeling a weighty presence pressing against us. Do you feel that? I asked, my voice trembling. Yes, Sarah replied, her brow furrowing in concentration. It's as if the house is reacting to what we've uncovered. We need to be careful. Just then, the shadows began to shift and swirl around us, and I could sense something lurking just beyond our sight. The air grew thick, and a low whisper echoed through the room, sending chills down my spine. Emily, it seemed to call, pulling us deeper into the mystery. Sarah, we have to be cautious, I urged, my instincts screaming at me to flee. But something held me there, a desire to uncover the truth that outweighed my fear. As we read on, the atmosphere became increasingly oppressive. I could feel the weight of the house pressing down on us, and I knew we were not alone. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, and the air was thick with tension. The stories of the past were coming alive around us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. We need to finish reading this, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the fear that lingered in her eyes. There's more to this story, and we can't turn back now. With each page we turned, the sense of urgency grew. The diary revealed the tragic fate of Emily and her lover, an ending steeped in betrayal and despair. But it also hinted at a way to break the curse, a ritual that could release the trapped souls and perhaps even shed light on the fate of those who had disappeared. Do you think we can perform the ritual? I asked, glancing at Sarah. What if it works? I don't know, she admitted, her brow furrowing in thought. But if there's a chance to free them, we have to try. We owe it to Emily and all the others. As we gathered our resolve, the shadows around us began to shift more violently. The house seemed to pulse with energy, and I could feel the air crackling with tension. I glanced at Sarah, and I could see the determination in her eyes. We as shadows of Cedar Hollow loomed large as I stepped into the town, the air thick with an unsettling silence that pressed against my chest. The quaint buildings and neatly trimmed hedges seemed to mock the whispers of dread that floated through the streets. I could almost hear the hushed conversations about the Abernathy house, the dilapidated structure that stood on the outskirts of town, steeped in tragedy and ghostly tales. Hey, you! A voice called out, pulling me from my thoughts. I turned to see an elderly man sitting on a bench, his weathered face etched with lines that told stories of their own. You're not from around here, are you? No, just passing through, I replied, curiosity piqued. I've heard some strange things about the Abernathy house. His eyes narrowed and he leaned forward slightly. You should be careful, young one. That house, it's the heart of Cedar Hollow's darkness. Many have disappeared near it, young folks especially. They say the house is cursed. What happened to them? I asked, feeling a chill creep up my spine. Lost to time, I suppose, he said, shaking his head. But the stories, they linger. If you value your life, you'll keep your distance. I nodded, though the thrill of the unknown ignited a fire within me. After our conversation, I found myself wandering to a small cafe, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the musty air. I took a seat by the window, the old man's words echoing in my mind. Are you all right? A voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to see a young woman, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, concern etched on her face. Yeah, just thinking about the stories surrounding the Abernathy house, I admitted. Her expression shifted, a shadow crossing her features. It's not just stories, it's real. My brother disappeared a few years ago, and I believe it has to do with that house, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I leaned in, intrigued. What do you mean? What happened to him? He was obsessed with the history of the Abernathy house. He thought he could uncover its secrets, but she trailed off, her gaze distant. He never came back. The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. You think he found something? Something dangerous? I don't know, she whispered, her eyes glistening. But I need to find out. I can't let him be another victim. Her determination resonated with me, and I found myself wanting to help her. Maybe we could investigate together? I'm not afraid of the house. A flicker of hope crossed her face. I'm Sarah, by the way, she said, extending her hand. Maybe we can uncover the truth together. As we left the cafe, a dark cloud settled over the town, casting a shadow on our intentions. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lay ahead was more than just a mystery. It was a reckoning. The drive to the Abernathy house was filled with an uneasy silence, the weight of the unknown pressing heavily on my chest. As we approached the house, its silhouette loomed like a specter against the gray sky. The air felt charged with energy, and I could almost hear the echoes of the past whispering through the trees. Are you ready? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, though the apprehension gnawed at my insides. I stepped out of the car, the chill of the air biting at my skin. The house stood before us, its windows dark and foreboding, as if it were a living entity watching our every move. I felt an involuntary shiver run down my spine, but curiosity propelled me forward. Let's do this, I said, approaching the door. My hand trembled slightly as I reached out to ring the doorbell. The sound echoed through the stillness, and for a moment, silence enveloped us. Then, the door creaked open slowly, revealing a dimly lit interior. A rush of cold air enveloped me, and I hesitated before stepping inside. The musty scent of decay filled my nostrils, and shadows danced along the walls, making me feel as though I were being watched. Stay close, Sarah urged, her voice steadying me as we crossed the threshold. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with a sense of foreboding. Dust motes floated in the air, illuminated by the faint light filtering through the grimy windows. I could feel a heaviness pressing down on us, as though the house itself were alive with secrets and sorrow. I can't believe we're actually here, Sarah murmured, her eyes scanning the surroundings. Let's find out what happened, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. As we moved deeper into the house, I caught sight of an old photo hanging on the wall. It depicted a young woman, her beauty striking even in the faded black and white. Next to her stood a man, his arm draped possessively around her waist. Emily? I read the name inscribed beneath the frame, an inexplicable connection sparking within me. Who do you think she is? Sarah asked, peering over my shoulder. I don't know, but she feels familiar, I replied, a strange sense of longing washing over me. We continued exploring the dimly lit corridors, our footsteps echoing against the floorboards, which creaked beneath our weight. As we entered a small room, I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. It was as if the very walls were whispering secrets, urging us to leave, yet I couldn't turn back now. "Look!" Sarah exclaimed, pointing to a corner of the room. Beneath the floorboards, something caught her eye. "There's something hidden here." We knelt down, pulling up the floorboards with trembling hands. Beneath them lay a leather-bound diary, its cover cracked with age. We exchanged a glance, an unspoken understanding passing between us. This could hold the answers we sought. I opened the diary carefully, the pages crumbling slightly as I turned them. The handwriting was elegant but shaky, revealing a tale of forbidden love. Emily's words poured out, detailing her secret relationship with a young man from a rival family. As I read, the room seemed to grow colder, and shadows flickered around us. Emily was in love with someone she wasn't supposed to be. I whispered, my heart racing. But it seems there's more to this. As I continued reading, a sense of dread settled over me. The diary spoke of a curse, a malediction that trapped the souls of those who had died within the house. My breath caught in my throat as I read about the tragic end of Emily and her lover, their lives cut short by the very families that sought to keep them apart. "This is horrifying," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "What if the curse is real? What if it's linked to your friend?" Just then, the atmosphere shifted, and a cold breeze swept through the room, causing the pages of the diary to flutter violently. Shadows began to move in the corners of my vision, and an oppressive weight settled on my chest. "Sarah, do you feel that?" I asked, my heart racing. "I do," she replied, her eyes wide with fear. "What's happening?" Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed through the house, causing us to jump. A window slammed shut violently, rattling the glass. The house seemed to convulse, as if it were alive and angry with our intrusion. "Maybe we should leave," I suggested, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. But before we could make our way back, Sarah took a deep breath and said, "I can't. I have to know what happened to my brother. This house holds the answers." I nodded, understanding her resolve, even as unease settled in my stomach. "All right, but we have to be careful." As we stood there, the shadows closed in, and I felt a presence looming, watching us. The house felt like a trap, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it wanted us to uncover its secrets, but was also warning us to turn back. "Let's keep looking," I said, trying to ignore the panic rising within me. "We might find something that connects all of this." We pressed on, each creak of the floorboards beneath our feet amplifying the tension in the air. The house seemed to shift around us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. As shadows danced around me in the dimly lit room of the Abernathy house, the air thick with whispers of the past, Sarah and I had uncovered secrets that the house seemed desperate to keep hidden. The oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on my chest, each breath a reminder of the spirits lingering in the corners, their stories begging to be told. "Do you feel that?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, feeling a chill race down my spine as I glanced toward the corner where the shadows seemed to gather, almost alive. "Let's keep looking," I suggested, trying to sound more confident than I felt. As we moved deeper into the house, the floorboards creaked beneath our feet, each sound echoing like a warning. We had barely begun to scratch the surface of the mysteries wrapped in these walls, and yet I could almost hear the spirits calling to us, urging us to listen. Then it happened. The air shifted, and I felt a sudden rush of cold enveloping me. From the depths of the shadows, a figure emerged, translucent and trembling. It was the ghostly visage of a man, his expression a mixture of anguish and yearning. "Emily," he breathed, his voice a mere whisper, yet it vibrated through the space, resonating in my bones. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my heart racing. Sarah stepped closer to me, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. "I am Thomas," the apparition replied, his form flickering like a candle in a draft. "Emily, she needs your help." "Help?" I echoed, glancing at Sarah, who looked equally startled and intrigued. "What do you mean?" He took a step closer, his eyes filled with sorrow. "The curse that binds us, it can only be broken by the truth. You must perform a ritual to free our souls. But be warned, the price is steep. You may lose yourselves in the process." "Why should we trust you?" Sarah asked, her voice steadier than mine. "How do we know you're not just another part of this dark game?" Thomas hesitated, pain etched across his spectral features. "I loved Emily. Our love was forbidden, and it cost us our lives. But it wasn't just the feud that took us. There's something darker at play here." "What do you mean?" I pressed, my mind racing. "What kind of darkness?" "The malediction is intertwined with the house itself," he explained, his voice trembling. "It feeds off the pain and suffering it has caused. The more fear and despair it creates, the stronger it becomes. You must confront that darkness to free us." A shudder ran through me, and I glanced at Sarah, who had gone pale. "What do we need to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tonight," Thomas urged, his form flickering more intensely. "During the eclipse, gather the items that connect you to the past, the locket, the letters. You must face the truth of what happened here." He paused, looking deep into our eyes. "And be prepared for what you might find. The house will not let you leave easily." As his words hung in the air, I felt a tremor beneath my feet, as if the very foundation of the house was shifting. "We'll do it," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "We'll help you." Thomas's expression softened, hope flickering in his eyes. "Thank you. But remember, the spirits that linger here are not all benevolent. Beware the one who feeds on despair." With that, his form began to dissipate, the shadows swallowing him whole. "Wait!" Sarah called out, reaching for him, but it was too late. He was gone, leaving us alone in the oppressive silence of the house. "Did that just happen?" I asked, still trying to process what we had just experienced. "I think so," Sarah replied, her eyes wide with disbelief. "But what do we do now?" "We prepare for tonight," I decided, trying to reclaim a sense of control. "We need to gather anything we can find that might be linked to Emily and Thomas. The locket, the letters, whatever we can uncover." As we began to search through the room, I felt the atmosphere thicken around us, almost as if the house itself was resisting our efforts. Shadows flickered in my peripheral vision, and I could almost hear the whispers of the spirits, warning us to turn back. "Look!" Sarah suddenly exclaimed, pulling me out of my thoughts. She held up a small, ornate locket that had been hidden beneath a pile of dust. "Is this what we need?" I took the locket from her hand, feeling a strange warmth radiate from it. "It could be, but it feels familiar," I said, studying the intricate designs etched into its surface. "Maybe it belonged to Emily." As I opened the locket, a faded photograph slipped out, revealing a young woman with bright eyes and a radiant smile. My heart raced as I recognized her. "It's Emily," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "She looks just like the picture we found earlier." "That means we're on the right track," Sarah said, determination flickering in her eyes. "We need to find out more about what happened to her and Thomas." We continued to search through the house, uncovering more relics of the past, letters, trinkets, and even a diary that revealed glimpses of Emily and Thomas's forbidden love. Each discovery felt like a step closer to unraveling the mystery, yet the atmosphere grew heavier, shadows stretching and contorting around us. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from one of the upper floors, startling us both. "What was that?" Sarah gasped, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," I replied, my instincts screaming for us to leave, but something deep inside urged me to stay. "We have to see what it is. It might lead us to the next clue." We climbed the staircase, each creak of the wood amplifying the tension in the air. As we reached the top, I felt a presence lurking just beyond the door at the end of the hallway. "Do you feel that?" I whispered to Sarah, who nodded, her breath hitching in her throat. "Let's go," she urged, her voice trembling but resolute. I pushed the door open slowly, the hinges protesting with a low groan. Inside, the room was dark, the air thick with dust and despair. As we stepped inside, a chill ran through me, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over us. In the center of the room, a swirling mist began to form, coalescing into the shape of a woman. "Emily," I breathed, stepping forward. "No," the figure moaned, her voice echoing with sorrow. "I am not Emily. I am the one who was wrong. I am the guardian of this house." "Guardian?" Sarah echoed, her voice shaky. "What do you want from us?" "You seek the truth," the specter replied, her voice a haunting melody. "But be warned, the truth can be a double-edged sword. It will reveal both love and loss, joy and pain." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. "The ritual you seek to perform will uncover the past, but it may also awaken forces you cannot control," she warned. "You must tread carefully, or you may unleash the darkness that lurks within these walls." I exchanged a glance with Sarah, feeling the weight of the decision before us. "We have to try," she said, her voice firm. "We can't leave until we know the truth." As I nodded in agreement, the atmosphere shifted again, the shadows swirling around us like a storm. "Gather what you need," the guardian urged, "but be prepared for the consequences." With that, the mist began to dissipate, and we were left standing in the dim light, uncertainty swirling in the air as we prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. We had come too far to turn back now. The spirits of Cedar Hollow were counting on us, and the truth was waiting to be uncovered. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a blood-red hue across the sky, a fitting prelude for the night ahead. Sarah and I stood in the dimly lit living room of the Abernathy house, surrounded by the heavy silence that had become a familiar companion in our investigation. The air crackled with anticipation, and I could feel the weight of the impending eclipse pressing down on us. "Are you sure we're ready for this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I was trying to mask the fear that gnawed at my insides. The house felt different tonight, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Sarah turned to me, her eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and dread. "We have to be. It's the only chance we have to free them, and maybe find my brother," she replied, her voice steady but laced with underlying tension. She clutched the amulet she had found earlier. Its surface glimmered faintly in the low light, a tangible connection to her family and the dark history of this place. I glanced around the room, taking in the peeling wallpaper and the darkened corners that seemed to harbor secrets of their own. "What if we're not strong enough?" I asked, the thought creeping into my mind like a shadow. "What if we unleash something we can't control?" Sarah stepped closer, her presence grounding me. "We have to believe we can do this. The spirits are counting on us. Emily and her lover, they've been trapped here long enough." Her voice trembled slightly, revealing the weight of her emotions. "If we don't try, then what's the point?" I nodded slowly, the gravity of her words settling over me. The sun had fully vanished now, leaving us in the eerie twilight of the approaching eclipse. I could feel the pull of the moon's shadow, a cosmic reminder of the significance of this moment. "Okay, let's do it." We gathered the items we had found: candles, herbs, and the diary that had revealed so much about Emily and her tragic love story. As we placed them in a circle on the floor, the atmosphere thickened, the air almost electric with anticipation. I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears, a drum roll to the ritual that was about to unfold. "Do you remember the words?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Yeah, I think so," I replied, though doubt lingered in the back of my mind. It was something about releasing the bonds that tie the souls to this place and allowing them to find peace. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing thoughts. "We just have to focus." As the last candle was lit, the flickering flames cast long shadows on the walls, and the house seemed to groan in response. I felt a chill run down my spine, a whisper of something lurking just beyond the veil of our reality. "Are you ready?" I asked Sarah, wanting to ensure she felt prepared. She nodded, her expression resolute. "Together," she said firmly, reaching for my hand. "We can do this together." With our hands clasped, we began to recite the words from the diary. The syllables felt foreign on my tongue, heavy with the weight of the past. As we spoke, I could feel the temperature in the room drop, an unnatural chill wrapping around us like a shroud. The flickering candle flames danced wildly, casting erratic shadows that seemed to mock us. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the house, making us jump apart. "What was that?" I exclaimed, heart racing. "I don't know," Sarah shouted back, her eyes wide with shock. "It's like the house is reacting to us." The walls trembled, and I could hear whispers rising around us, indistinct voices woven into the fabric of the night. "We have to keep going," I urged, pulling her back to our circle. "We can't let this stop us." We resumed the incantation, our voices rising in unison. The shadows in the room began to swirl, coalescing into dark figures that flickered at the edges of our vision. I could feel the spirits gathering, their energies swirling around us, a mix of desperation and longing. "Emily," Sarah called out, her voice ringing clear above the chaos. "We're here to help you." The shadows shifted, and for a moment, I could see her. A pale, shimmering figure with sorrowful eyes, hovering just beyond the reach of our light. "Help me," she whispered, her voice a haunting echo. "Free us?" I swallowed hard, the weight of her plea settling heavily in my chest. "We will, Emily," I shouted, my conviction strengthening. "We'll break the curse." As we continued the ritual, the shadows grew restless, swirling around us like a tempest. I felt the energy in the room intensify, pushing against us, testing our resolve. A low growl reverberated through the walls, a warning that sent shivers down my spine. "Stay focused," Sarah urged, squeezing my hand tighter. "We can't let them distract us." Just as I thought we were gaining momentum, a figure surged forward from the shadows. A man, his face contorted with rage and despair. "You think you can just take them?" he roared, his voice a guttural snarl. "You know nothing of the price." I staggered back, the intensity of his presence almost overwhelming. "Who are you?" I gasped, feeling the oppressive weight of his anger. "I am the keeper of this house," he growled, shadows coiling around him like serpents. "You cannot free the souls without paying the ultimate price." Sarah's grip on my hand tightened as she faced the apparition. "We won't back down. Emily deserves to be free," she shouted, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. The figure sneered, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light. "You're foolish to think you can challenge me. This house is mine. It will always be mine." I felt a rush of determination surge through me. "No, we won't let you keep them here," I shouted back, my voice resonating with defiance. "We'll break your hold over this place." With renewed fervor, we turned back to our chant, our voices weaving through the chaos. The shadows writhed, and I could feel the presence of the spirits pushing against the darkness, fighting for their freedom. As we spoke the final words of the incantation, the room erupted into a cacophony of sound, screams, wails, and whispers mingling in a horrifying symphony. The ground shook beneath us, and I felt the very foundation of the house tremble as if it were alive, caught between two worlds. "Hold on," Sarah yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're almost there." With one final surge of energy, we finished the incantation, and a blinding light enveloped us, washing away the shadows that had clung to the walls. I shielded my eyes, feeling the warmth of the light seeping into my bones, filling the house with a sense of peace I had never known. As the light faded, I opened my eyes to find the room transformed. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a serene stillness. The shadows were gone, and in their place stood the spirits of Emily and her lover, their faces illuminated by a gentle glow. "Thank you," Emily whispered, her voice a soft caress. "You've freed us." Tears filled my eyes as I looked at her, feeling the weight of her gratitude. "We did it," I breathed, disbelief washing over me. "We really did it." But as the spirits began to fade, Another figure materialized from the shadows, the man who had tried to stop us. His face twisted in fury, and I felt a chill creep up my spine. "You think this is over?" he growled, his voice echoing with rage. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." I exchanged a panicked glance with Sarah, the reality of our situation crashing down like a wave. "What do we do?" I whispered, fear clawing at my throat. Sarah's eyes burned with determination. "We stand together," she said fiercely, her voice unwavering. "We won't let him take them back." With the weight of the spirit's hope behind us, we prepared to face whatever was coming next, united in our mission to protect the freedom we had fought so hard to achieve. As the air crackled with tension, I knew one thing for certain. Our battle was far from over. The air was thick with tension as night fell over Cedar Hollow, a darkness that seemed to wrap around the old Abernathy house like a shroud. The moon was just a sliver in the sky, barely illuminating the path we took as Sarah and I made our way to the house. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a drum echoing the fear that thrummed in the atmosphere. The weight of the spirits we had encountered before felt heavier than ever, as if they were aware of our intentions and were watching, waiting, and hoping for the night to unfold. "Are you sure about this?" I asked Sarah, glancing over at her. Her face was a mask of determination, but her eyes held a flicker of uncertainty. "I have to be," she replied, her voice steady but low. "For my brother, for Emily. We have to try." We stepped onto the porch, the old wood creaking beneath our feet, a sound that seemed to echo through the silence of the night. I took a deep breath, letting the chill of the air fill my lungs as I pushed open the door. It creaked ominously, revealing the darkened interior of the house. Shadows danced along the walls, as if the spirits were already stirring, anticipating our arrival. "Let's set everything up in the main room," Sarah suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, feeling the gravity of the moment settle over us. The room was vast and filled with remnants of the past. Furniture draped in dust sheets, cobwebs clinging to the corners, and a lingering scent of decay that made my stomach churn. As we arranged candles in a circle, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of something unseen. I glanced around, half expecting to see a face lurking in the shadows. "Do you feel that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "What?" Sarah replied, her brow furrowed in concentration as she lit the first candle. "Like, something is here with us," I admitted. "Like we're not alone." She paused, looking around the room as if searching for something hidden in the gloom. "I feel it too. It's like a pressure in the air, right? It's the spirits. They know we're trying to help them." With the candles lit and the circle complete, we took a moment to breathe, to center ourselves. I closed my eyes, trying to clear my mind, but the weight of the house pressed down on me. The air felt charged, electric, as if the house itself was alive and aware of our purpose. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking through my thoughts. I opened my eyes, meeting her gaze. "As ready as I'll ever be." We stood in the center of the circle, hands clasped together, feeling the warmth of each other's presence. The room felt more alive now, the flickering candlelight casting shadows that danced along the walls. I took a deep breath, focusing on the energy around us, willing it to grow stronger. "Spirits of the Abernathy house," Sarah began, her voice firm yet reverent. "We come to you with respect and compassion. We wish to help you find peace. We ask that you show us the way." As her words echoed through the room, a chill swept over us, and the candles flickered violently. I felt a shiver run down my spine, the air thickening as if something was pushing against us. I could hear whispers, faint and indistinct, swirling around the room like a tempest. "Do you hear that?" I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. "Yeah," Sarah said, her eyes wide with awe. "It's them. They're responding." The shadows seemed to deepen, coalescing into shapes that flickered at the edge of my vision. I could feel the energy in the room shifting, a palpable force that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. It felt as if the house itself was breathing, alive with the weight of the past. Show us what we need to do, I urged, my voice rising above the whispers. Help us free you. The air grew colder, and suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, an ethereal form, shimmering with a ghostly light. I recognized him immediately. It was Emily's lover, his expression a mix of sorrow and longing. Free us, he whispered, his voice echoing through the room, a sound that sent chills coursing through my body. But beware, the price is steep. What do you mean? Sarah asked, her voice firm despite the fear that flickered in her eyes. The curse binds us, but it also protects you, he explained, his form flickering as if struggling to maintain coherence. To release us means to unleash the darkness that lurks within these walls. The truth behind the curse is far more terrifying than you know. I don't care, Sarah exclaimed, her determination shining through the fear. We have to try. We can't let you suffer any longer. He looked at her, a deep sadness reflected in his eyes. Then you must be prepared. The darkness will rise, and you will face your own fears. Only then can you hope to set us free. As he spoke, shadows began to swirl around us, twisting and morphing into grotesque shapes that taunted us. I felt a surge of panic wash over me, the fear of the unknown clawing at my insides. Stay strong, I said, squeezing Sarah's hand. We can do this together. The figure of Emily's lover began to fade, but his eyes bore into us with a fierce intensity. The ritual must be completed under the light of the eclipse, he urged. Only then will the power be strong enough to break the curse. Wait, I shouted, but he was already dissipating, the shadows swallowing him whole. The room shuddered violently as the darkness pressed in around us, and I felt a wave of memories crashing over me, visions of the past, of pain and betrayal, of love lost and lives shattered. Fight it, Sarah cried out, her voice strained. Focus on the love that binds us. I closed my eyes, envisioning the warmth of those I loved. I thought of my family, of the joy we shared and the strength we found in each other. I thought of Sarah and the bond we had formed, forged in the fire of our shared experiences. Together, I whispered, feeling the warmth of her hand in mine. We can do this together. The shadows recoiled, as if they could sense our resolve. The air was electric with energy as we began to chant the words of the ritual, our voices rising in unison, a beacon of light in the oppressive darkness. Spirits of the Abernathy house, we call upon you. We seek to set you free. The ground beneath us trembled, and the shadows writhed in protest as our voices grew louder. The candles flickered wildly, their flames dancing in a chaotic rhythm. I could feel the temperature drop, the air around us thickening with the weight of the spirit's anguish. Show us the truth, Sarah shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. Show us what we must do to break the curse. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the center of our circle, illuminating the darkened corners of the room. The shadows screamed, a cacophony of despair that shook me to my core. I felt a surge of fear, but I pushed it down, focusing on the light, on the love that had brought us here. Stay with me, I urged Sarah, our voices harmonizing as we continued to chant. The light grew brighter, enveloping us in its warmth, and the shadows began to recede. I could see the figure of Emily's lover materializing once more, his form more defined, his expression one of hope. Do not falter, he urged, his voice a powerful force against the darkness. You are the key to our freedom. And in that moment, as I stood in the circle of light with Sarah, I realized that our love, our determination, was the very force that could shatter the chains binding the spirits. We had the power to break the cycle, to rid the house of its malevolence. Together, I shouted, drawing strength from Sarah's unwavering presence. We will not let fear control us. With one final surge of energy, we chanted the last words of the ritual, our voices merging into a single powerful note that resonated through the house. The air crackled with energy, and the ground shook violently beneath us as the shadows screamed in fury. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the light exploded outward, engulfing everything in its path. The shadows dissipated, vanished into nothingness, and the room was filled with a blinding brilliance that made my heart race. "We did it!" Sarah exclaimed, her voice filled with awe and disbelief. But as the light began to fade, I realized that this was only the beginning. The true test was yet to come, and as the echoes of the past faded into silence, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had awakened something far more powerful than we could ever have anticipated. As shadows danced around us, and I felt a cold grip on my heart as the world around me began to shift, I blinked, and suddenly we were no longer in the dimly lit room of the Abernathy house. Instead, I found myself standing on the same creaking floorboards, but the air was different. It was alive with energy, filled with voices that whispered secrets long buried. The walls, once covered in dust, now gleamed with a vibrancy that felt centuries old. "Is this the past?" Sarah's voice trembled next to me, and I could see the wide-eyed wonder mixed with fear on her face. "I think so," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. "We must be witnessing the moments that led to the curse." Before us, a scene unfolded, vibrant and haunting. A young woman, her beauty ethereal, stood in the center of a lavish parlor. It was Emily, the girl from the photograph we had found. She was laughing, her voice like music, but there was an undercurrent of sadness that tugged at my heart. "Look at her," I said, pointing. "She seems so alive, so full of hope." "But what happened to her?" Sarah murmured, her eyes fixed on Emily. Just then, the atmosphere shifted again. The door to the parlor burst open, and a man entered. He was handsome, with dark hair and an intense gaze that seemed to hold 1,000 secrets. It was Emily's lover, the young man from the photograph. "Emily," he called, his voice filled with desperation. "We have to talk. They know about us." A chill ran down my spine as I watched the fear wash over Emily's face. "You must leave, Jonathan," she urged, her voice trembling. "If my father finds out, he will never allow us to be together." "I don't care what your father thinks," he said, stepping closer, his determination palpable. "I love you, and I will fight for us." Their love was beautiful yet tragic, a flame flickering against the storm. I felt a pang of longing as I watched them. Their world was filled with the kind of love that felt eternal, yet it was also suffocated by the weight of their family's expectations. But then, the atmosphere shifted again. A dark figure appeared in the doorway, Emily's father. His face was twisted with anger, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. "Emily, how dare you consort with that wretch?" He spat, his voice dripping with contempt. "Father, please," Emily cried, stepping forward. "You don't understand. Jonathan loves me." "Love?" He laughed, a harsh and bitter sound. "What do you know of love? You are a fool to think I would allow this union." The tension thickened, and I felt Sarah's hand grip mine tightly. "This is where it all went wrong," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rising storm of emotions. "Leave now before I lose my patience," her father thundered, his voice echoing through the room like rolling thunder. Jonathan stood his ground, his eyes blazing with defiance. "I will not leave her. I would rather die than be without her." "You will get what you deserve, boy," her father hissed, stepping forward. "You think you can defy me? I will not have my family disgraced by your insolence." It happened so fast. Before I could process the moment, the father lunged at Jonathan, and I felt a rush of fear. I wanted to shout, to warn him, but my voice was lost in the whirlwind of the past. "Run!" Emily screamed, her eyes wide with terror, but it was too late. A scuffle ensued, and in an instant, the room was filled with chaos. Jonathan was thrown against the wall, and I watched in horror as Emily's father raised a glinting object, a knife. "No!" I shouted, but the sound fell flat in the echo of history. The blade glinted as it plunged into Jonathan's chest. Time seemed to freeze, and I felt Sarah's breath catch in her throat. Emily fell to her knees, her cries piercing the heavy air like a dagger. "Jonathan, no!" she wailed, her voice echoing through the ages. The scene around me blurred, and I felt a deep, aching pain in my chest as I witnessed the love lost to violence and hatred. "Why?" Emily cried, cradling Jonathan's lifeless body. "Why did you do this? We only wanted to be together." Her father stood over them, his face a mask of rage and sorrow. "It was for your own good, my daughter. You will never understand the consequences of your foolishness." As the echoes of their confrontation faded, the world around us shifted again. I could feel the weight of their tragedy, the darkness that had seeped into the walls of the Abernathy house, wrapping it in a shroud of despair. "That was the moment," I said softly, my heart heavy. "That was when the curse began." "But why?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "Why did he have to die?" "The malediction," I murmured, piecing together the fragments of history. "It was born out of this tragedy." Emily's father likely believed he was protecting their family name, but in reality, he damned them all. As the scene faded, I felt a pull, a shift in the air, and suddenly, we were thrust into a different room. A dimly lit chamber adorned with ornate furniture. In the corner sat a grand mirror, its surface clouded with dust. "Look!" Sarah exclaimed, pointing towards the mirror. As we approached, the glass rippled like water, and I could see images shifting within it. Flashes of Emily and Jonathan's faces, their love intertwined with despair. "Emily?" I whispered, reaching out to touch the surface. "What happened to you after that day?" Suddenly, the mirror darkened, and I felt the weight of Emily's sorrow pressing down on me. I could hear her voice, soft and haunting. "I was left alone," she said, her tone filled with anguish. "My father locked me away, believing it was for my protection. But I was not safe. I was a prisoner in my own home, mourning the love I had lost, while the shadows of my family's sins enveloped me." Tears streamed down my face as I listened to her story. "Emily, I'm so sorry," I whispered, feeling the depth of her pain. "The curse was born from that pain," she continued, her voice echoing in the chamber. "It binds us here, lost between worlds, unable to find peace. My father thought he could protect our family by silencing the truth, but he only chained our souls to this house, forever haunted by the love we could never fulfill." As her words hung in the air, I felt a connection to her, a bridge spanning the centuries that separated us. I could sense the desperation in her spirit, the yearning for freedom that resonated deep within me. "Emily, we can help you," I said, my voice growing stronger. "We are here to uncover the truth. Your story will not be silenced." "You must understand," she replied, her voice a whisper of wind. "The truth carries a burden. It may lead to salvation, but it could also unleash the darkness that lies in the shadows. The curse is not just mine. It entwines all who enter this house. But we can break it," Sarah interjected, her voice filled with determination. "We can find a way to free you and your lover. We won't let your pain go unanswered." Emily's spirit flickered, and for a moment, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "You are brave, but be cautious. The forces that bind us are powerful, and they will not let go easily. We will face whatever comes," I vowed, my heart racing with purpose. "You deserve peace, Emily. Your love deserves to be remembered, not buried in the shadows." As the mirror shimmered, I felt the weight of history pressing against my chest. I knew that our journey was just beginning, and the truth we sought would come at a cost. But in that moment, standing in the echoes of the past, I felt an unyielding resolve to uncover the secrets of the Abernathy house and free the souls trapped within its walls. "Together," I said, looking at Sarah, who nodded in agreement, "we will uncover the truth and set you free." And with that promise, the darkness began to recede, and the light of hope flickered within the depths of Cedar Hollow, guiding us toward the answers we desperately sought. The tension in the air was palpable as we stood in the dimly lit room, surrounded by the echoes of the past. Shadows danced along the walls, flickering as if they held secrets too heavy to bear. My heart raced as I turned to Sarah, her face etched with determination and fear. The truth was finally laid bare before us, and the weight of our choices pressed down like a leaden shroud. "We have to decide," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do we free them or keep the curse alive?" Sarah's gaze was intense, her blue eyes glimmering with unshed tears. "If we free them," she replied, "we might also be freeing my brother. He could be trapped with them, suffering under this curse." She paused, taking a deep breath to steady herself. "But what if it unleashes something worse?" The flickering candlelight cast a ghostly glow on her face, and I could see the conflict raging within her. The stakes had never been higher. We had come so far, delving into the dark history of the Abernathy house, uncovering the tragic love story of Emily and her lover, and the malevolent force that held them captive. The diary we had found revealed the curse that bound their souls, but it also hinted at something much darker lurking beneath the surface. "Think about it, Sarah," I urged. "If we don't act, the town will continue to suffer. More young lives could be lost, just as your brother was." The memory of the old man at the cafe recounted tales of disappearances, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Cedar Hollow had been haunted by tragedy for too long. She bit her lip, her brow furrowed in thought. But what if freeing them allows that evil to return? What if it spreads beyond the house? Her voice trembled slightly, revealing the fear that gripped her heart. I stepped closer, reaching out to grasp her shoulders gently, grounding her in the moment. "We've seen the spirits. They're tormented. They need closure just like you need to find your brother. We can't let fear dictate our actions. We owe it to them and to ourselves to try." Sarah's eyes softened, and I saw the flicker of hope mixed with despair. "You're right," she finally said, her voice steadier. "We have to do this. For Emily, for her lover, and for my brother. They deserve to be free." As we prepared for the final ritual, the weight of our decision settled heavily in the air. I could feel the house itself responding, its creaks and groans echoing the tension of our collective breaths. The shadows seemed to deepen, swirling as if anticipating the chaos we were about to unleash. "Let's gather everything we need," I said, moving to the table where the remnants of our earlier investigations lay scattered. "We'll need the diary, the candles, and the amulet you found. Every piece matters." I watched as she collected the items, her movements graceful yet anxious. The amulet gleamed in her hand, a symbol of her connection to this dark legacy. "I can't shake the feeling that this is more than just a curse," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "What if we're inviting something back that's far worse than we can imagine?" The thoughts echoed in my mind as I arranged the candles in a circle, envisioning the energy we would summon. We have to trust that we're doing the right thing. The spirits need our help. We need to give them a chance to find peace. As we lit the candles, the flames flickered and danced, casting long shadows across the room. The air grew thick with anticipation, a charged energy that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. "Are you ready?" I asked, turning to Sarah. She nodded, her expression resolute but tinged with uncertainty. "Ready as I'll ever be. Let's do this." We took our places within the circle, the light of the candles illuminating our faces in an ethereal glow. I held the diary, its pages worn and fragile, and opened it to the passage about the ritual. My heart raced as I read the words aloud, the ancient incantation flowing from my lips like a haunting melody. As the last syllable escaped my mouth, the ground beneath us trembled, and the shadows around us began to swirl violently. A low, mournful wail echoed through the house, the sound reverberating in my bones. I glanced at Sarah, her eyes wide with fear and determination. "Stay focused. We're doing this for them," I shouted over the cacophony, my voice barely breaking through the noise. Suddenly, the spirits began to manifest around us, their forms flickering in and out of existence. Emily appeared first, her face a mask of sorrow. "Help us!" she cried, her voice echoing in the air. "We are trapped." I felt a surge of empathy coursing through me, a deep understanding of their pain. "We're here to help you, Emily. We'll break the curse." The spirits swirled around us, their energy palpable, but then the atmosphere shifted. Dark tendrils of shadow began to creep in, wrapping around the spirits like chains. "No!" I yelled, reaching out to the phantoms, but the darkness pressed in, threatening to swallow us whole. "Fight it!" Sarah screamed, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We have to push back." I focused on the ritual, drawing strength from the flames of the candles. "Emily, tell us what we need to do," I shouted, my heart pounding in my chest. Her eyes widened, and she gestured toward the amulet in Sarah's hand. "The amulet. It's the key. Use it." The shadows writhed, but the spirits began to rally, their forms growing more defined. With trembling hands, Sarah raised the amulet high, its surface shimmering with a faint light. "What do we do?" she cried, her voice breaking with urgency. "Channel the energy," I urged. "Bring the spirits forward. They need to connect with you." As the shadows lunged toward us, Sarah and I focused on the amulet, channeling our intentions into it. The air crackled with energy, and the flames of the candles flared higher, illuminating the room with an otherworldly glow. I could feel the presence of the spirits gathering around us, their energy merging with ours. "Together!" I shouted, as the shadows roared, trying to drown us in darkness. "We can do this!" We stood united, Sarah's determination shining through the fear. "Emily, we're here for you," she cried, her voice ringing with conviction. With a deafening roar, the shadows lunged forward, but we stood our ground, the light from the amulet pushing back against the encroaching darkness. I could feel the energy building, a torrent of light and hope surging through us. "Now!" I shouted, as the spirits began to coalesce, their forms intertwining with the light. "Let them go!" The shadows shrieked, battling the light, but our voices rose in unison, a chorus of determination echoing through the house. "You are free. You are loved. Let go of the past." In that moment, I felt a surge of energy like nothing I had ever experienced, and the house trembled around us. The shadows writhed in agony, unable to bear the light any longer. The spirits began to rise, their forms glowing brighter, breaking the chains that bound them. "Emily, go to the light," I cried, my voice filled with urgency. "Thank you," she whispered, her face serene as she dissolved into radiant light, her lover following close behind. The other spirits began to join them, their faces shifting from anguish to peace. As the last of the spirits ascended, the shadows let out a final, anguished wail before dissipating into nothingness. The room fell silent, the air heavy with the remnants of what had just transpired. "Did we do it?" Sarah's voice broke the silence, trembling with disbelief. I turned to her, my heart racing. I think we did." The weight of the house seemed to lift, the oppressive atmosphere replaced by a profound sense of peace. As the candles flickered one last time, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me, but it was accompanied by a strange lightness. The curse had been lifted, and the spirits were finally free. But in that moment of triumph, I couldn't shake the feeling that our journey was far from over. The truth about the house, about Sarah's brother, and the darkness that had lingered for so long still loomed on the horizon. The air in the room was thick with tension, a palpable force that seemed to press against my chest. The shadows flickered around me, twisting and writhing as if they were alive, eager to share their secrets. I stood at the center of the chaos, the culmination of everything I had uncovered about the Abernathy house and its tragic past. The echoes of Emily's love and the torment of lost souls resonated in my mind, but now I faced my own reckoning. "Do you really think we can do this?" Sarah's voice trembled slightly, her eyes wide with both fear and determination. She stood next to me, clutching the amulet that had belonged to her family, its cold metal seeming to pulse with energy. "We have to," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "We've come too far to turn back now. We have to set them free." I glanced around the dim room, where the walls seemed to close in on us, the air humming with the energy of the spirits we were about to confront. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah pressed, her brow furrowed. "What if releasing them unleashes something worse?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settling heavily on my shoulders. We can't let fear dictate our choices. If we don't do this, they'll remain trapped, and who knows what else might happen. I met her gaze, and in that moment, I saw the resolve in her eyes. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead, just as I was. We gathered the items we needed for the ritual, placing them in a circle on the floor. Candles flickered to life, casting eerie shadows on the walls, illuminating the dusty remnants of the past. The house creaked ominously around us, but we pressed on, driven by the knowledge that we were fighting for the freedom of lost souls. Emily, her lover, and perhaps even Sarah's brother. As we began to chant the incantation we had found in the diary, the atmosphere shifted. The air crackled with energy, and a low rumble echoed through the house, vibrating in my bones. I could feel the spirits stirring, their presence growing stronger as if they were awakening from a long slumber. "Emily, if you can hear us, we're here to help," I shouted, the words spilling from my lips as I focused on the flickering candlelight. The flames danced wildly in response, and I could sense the urgency in the room. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and a gust of wind swept through, extinguishing the candles in an instant. Darkness enveloped us, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "What's happening?" Sarah whispered, panic creeping into her voice. "Stay close," I urged, my heart racing as I fumbled for my flashlight. When the beam of light pierced the darkness, it revealed Sarah's terrified face and the shadows swirling ominously around us. "Let them go!" A voice boomed from the depths of the darkness. It was a chilling sound, echoing with both menace and sorrow. "You cannot free them without paying the price." "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my insides. "I am the keeper of their souls," the voice replied, resonating through the room like a mournful dirge. "You tread on sacred ground, and the cost of freedom is steep. Whatever it is, we'll pay it," Sarah declared, her courage shining through the fear. "We have to save them." The shadows coalesced, forming the figure of a man, his features indistinct, but his presence exuding a sense of authority. "You do not understand the darkness you invite. My love for Emily binds me to this place. I cannot let her go. Your love is what has kept her imprisoned," I shouted, frustration boiling over. "You have to let her rest." In that moment, the air thickened, and I felt a connection to the man before us. An inexplicable bond that tied me to him and the history of this house. "Wait," I said, a realization dawning on me. "You're her lover, aren't you? The one who died here." "Yes," he replied, his voice softening, tinged with regret. "But the curse was not my doing. It was the consequence of a love that defied the laws of our families. I have been trapped here, unable to find peace, and now you come to meddle with forces you do not comprehend. Then tell us how to break it," I implored, desperation creeping into my voice. "We can help you. We can help Emily." "Help?" he scoffed, the shadows around him swirling angrily. "You think you can help us? You are merely pawns in a game played by forces greater than you." "Enough!" Sarah shouted, stepping forward, her voice fierce. "We're not afraid of you. We will do whatever it takes to free them, even if it means facing our own fears." At her words, the air shifted again, and I felt a surge of energy radiating from Sarah's amulet. The shadows recoiled as if repelled by its light. The figure hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his spectral face. "Your strength is admirable," he said, his tone shifting. "But do you know the truth? Do you know what you are dealing with?" "What truth?" I pressed, feeling the weight of his gaze. "Tell us." He hesitated, and for a brief moment, the shadows around him dimmed, revealing glimpses of his past. I saw Emily's laughter, the stolen moments they shared, and the agony of their separation. But then, darkness enveloped him again, and he spoke, his voice heavy with sorrow. "The curse was meant to protect my love, to keep her safe from the wrath of our families. But it has only brought suffering to all. You must choose. Will you set us free and risk unleashing the darkness that binds us? Or will you keep us shackled to this cursed fate? The choice lay heavy on my heart, and as I looked at Sarah, I knew we had come too far to turn back now. We have to take the risk, I said, my voice steady. For Emily, for your love, and for everyone who has suffered because of this curse. The figure's eyes flickered with something akin to hope, but then a shudder coursed through the house, and I felt the energy shift again. Then you must be prepared for the consequences, he warned, his voice now a whisper. The darkness will retaliate. In that moment, I felt the pull of something deep within me, a connection to the very essence of the house. I'm ready, I declared, the words echoing through the chamber. I'll break this cycle, whatever it takes. As I stepped forward, the room trembled, and the shadows writhed menacingly. I could feel the malevolent force gathering strength, threatening to consume us. Sarah, hold on to the amulet. Keep it close, I shouted, determination surging through me. With every ounce of strength, I focused on the incantation. The words flowed from my lips, weaving a tapestry of light that pushed against the encroaching darkness. Emily, if you can hear us, come to us. We're here to save you. The shadows roared in protest, swirling around us like a tempest. You cannot escape the past, the voice echoed, now more furious than ever. You will all pay the price. But I pushed through the chaos, the words of the incantation growing louder, drowning out the darkness. We release you from your chains. Emily, find your peace. In that moment, the shadows coalesced into a whirlwind, and I felt a presence behind me. It was Sarah, her face set with determination, her hands clutching the amulet tightly. We're not afraid of you, she shouted, her voice cutting through the darkness like a beacon. And then, as if responding to our united strength, the shadows began to retreat. I could see the faint outline of Emily, her spirit shimmering like a star in the night. Thank you, she whispered, her voice ethereal and soft. Thank you for freeing me. The figure of her lover faltered, his form flickering as the shadows recoiled. No, Emily, he cried, desperation lacing his voice. You can't leave me. I won't let you. But Emily's spirit shone brighter, and with a final, resolute glance, she turned to him. It's time to let go. We must find peace, together. As the two spirits began to merge, the energy surged through the room, and I felt a jolt of realization hit me like a thunderbolt. No, I gasped, the truth washing over me in waves. I'm part of this. I'm connected to the curse. What do you mean? Sarah asked, her eyes wide with shock. I'm a descendant of the family that created this curse, I exclaimed, the weight of the revelation crashing down on me. My presence here was never an accident. I was meant to confront this darkness. Then you have to break the cycle, she urged, her voice filled with urgency. I will, I replied, my heart racing. But I need to confront the truth of my ancestry. I have to sacrifice myself to allow them to be free. No, Sarah cried, panic flooding her voice. You can't. There has to be another way. This is the only way, I insisted, determination hardening in my chest. I've been drawn.